In the capsules below, you'll note two tables. The first is a statistical snapshot courtesy of my colleague Hayden Winks. The second is the spider web of each prospect's test results from the NFL Combine, courtesy of MockDraftable. 1. TJ Hockenson, Iowa, 6'5", 251st SPARQ percentile, 87.9 comp, a better blocking Rob Gronkowski minus an inch, 10 pounds, and 2% of the receiving profile. I want to tell you a story. But for the skimmers, I don't want to bury the lead. TJ Hockenson is a monster. He's a tour de force blocker who in 2018 shoved past Noah Fant on Iowa's receiving pecking order to emerge as the nation's best receiving tight end. Hawk was a first-team All-American who won the Mackey and Ozzie Newsome Awards. He was the nation's best tight end by a wide margin. Back to that in a minute. First, a story. In 2011, the New England Patriots went 13-3 and averaged 32.1 ppg, losing in the Super Bowl to the New York Giants. The team couldn't run a lick. The leading rusher was former Indiana and Ole Miss try-hard banger Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, but had an utterly dominant passing attack despite not having a classic NFL WR1 on the roster. Instead, the attack featured a generational slot, Wes Welker, a generational YT, Gronk, and a stud FT, Aaron Hernandez, who turned out to be a joker on the field and the joker off it. Gronk and Hernandez caught 169 balls combined that year for 2,237 yards and 24 TD. The tight ends coach on that team was a coaching newcomer named Brian Ferentz. After a 2-year NFL playing career, Ferentz spent 3 years under Bill Belichick, the first as a scouting assistant, the second, 2010, as an assistant tight ends coach, and the third, 2011, as the tight ends coach proper. After the 2011 campaign, Ferentz, an up-and-coming NFL assistant, left the league to accept an objectively worse position, that of Iowa's OL coach. Nepotism runs rampant in the coaching profession. Consider this a kickback the other way. The Hawkeyes were only able to bring back the Rising Star alumnus because Brian's dad, Kirk, was Iowa's longtime head coach. Brian coached OL for 5 years before Kirk promoted him to offensive coordinator in 2017. And it was at that time that Brian must have pinched himself. His Big Ten roster had a raw version of the Gronk combo he'd coached at his only NFL stop. Iowa's 2017 passing game was straightforward: go to slot WR Nick Easley, Welker, when you need yards, and go to Fant, when you were fishing for big plays or touchdowns. Gronk was a blocking super freak who was exceedingly raw as a receiver, more of a weapon in the running game than he was the passing game. Fant, a raw athletic super freak, was the joker and Ferentz leveraged him as a red zone assassin. In 2017, Fant scored 11 TD on only 30 receptions. Hockenson was essentially a blocking specialist who doubled as a tertiary receiving option on passing downs when Iowa had he and Fant on the field at the same time. In 2017, Hawk finished behind forgettable RB Akram Wadley and already forgotten WR Matt Vandenberg to finish 5th on the team in receptions. Like everyone else, I ranked Fant as TE1 in my too early 2019 NFL draft rankings last May. Hockenson checked in further down that list. For Iowa, any gains Hawk made as a receiver were gravy. The Hawkeyes were thrilled to simply have a third offensive tackle on the field every time he was on the field for a running play. Then a strange thing happened. From the very start of the 2018 season, it was Hockenson, and not Fant, who was Iowa's featured receiver. All of a sudden, Hockenson was the more polished receiver, the more reliable receiver, the more dangerous receiver. And, of course, he remained a vicious, eat-your-soul blocker. I had a front-row seat to Hawk's metamorphosis. I'm an Iowa alum who hasn't missed a Hawkeyes game since 2009, when I began grad school. From the start of Big Ten play on, Hockenson was the best Iowa player I've seen during my almost decade as a fan. The dramatic one-year improvement was notable, as was the Ferentz's zeal to turn Hockenson into the focal point of the passing offense this fall. Iowa is an NFL tight end factory. The position has always been prioritized in the Hawkeyes' physical, NFL-esque offense. And it only become more so when Kirk hired his son away from the Pats in 2011. In a nutshell, the Ferentz has turned Hawk into Gronk, or as close a version as they could with the time they had. In 2018, they used the kid as a play-in, play-out trump card weapon. Hawk lined up in line. He lined up at fullback. He motioned around and did H-back stuff. He lined up outside and in the slot on certain plays. Wherever the Ferentz figured he'd do the most damage on a given play, that's where Hockenson was. Sometimes that meant bulldozing a poor defensive end into the third level after lining up in line. Sometimes that meant motioning into the backfield to ensure a successful seal block on a counter. Sometimes that meant lining up as a lead blocking fullback when a few yards were needed and a hole needed to be opened by sending Hawk into the scrum like a stick of dynamite into the side of a mountain. Hawk is such a good blocker because he's so freaking clever and so freaking country strong. Find a blocking highlight clip of him on Twitter or YouTube. You'll see plays where he drives a bigger player 15 yards downfield and wipes out a safety. The Indiana game is one example. You'll see standard pancakes when the defender doesn't have the balance necessary to get driven that far back. Some plays, Hawk is a next-level hammer, a violent blend of power, technique and never-say-die effort, perhaps his most underrated skill. But you'll also see a ton of non-highlight blocks, where Hawk takes his man out of the play with minimal effort by using brain and not brawn. He'll allow his man to make the first move upfield, and then, like a counterpuncher in MMA, he'll simply use the poor fool's momentum against him, calmly sliding him out of the play like a glass of water across an empty countertop. A top-notch athlete, Hawk runs gorgeous routes that manipulate defenders for space. He offers a big catch radius for his quarterback, almost never drops the ball, and is absolute hell to deal with after the catch. Hawk isn't just athletic, and he isn't just powerful and resolute with the ball in his hands, he's also a crafty son of a gun. If you get a chance to check out his tape before late April, watch out for his patented hurdles of silly defensive backs who think they can take him down by chopping out his ankles. The numbers bear all this out. Hawk's aggregate receiving numbers helped him win every award a collegiate tight end can win in 2018. His advanced numbers, per PFF, also wow. Among the top tight ends in the class, Hawk finished No. 3 in yards run per route behind Caleb Wilson and Irv Smith, and ahead of Noah Fant, and, despite the increased difficulty, he dropped only one catchable target last year, 2.00% drop rate, equaling his career total of drops heading into the campaign. If I'm associated with anything this I was already anything with Fant. I wasn't looking for another TE1. But in October, I could no longer deny what my eyes were seeing. I've heard plenty of arguments on Twitter about why you don't draft a TE that high. Most of those arguments center around Eric Ebron. Coming out of UNC, Ebron wasn't in Hockenson's class as a prospect. As a pure receiver, sure. But, what makes Hawk special is the elite blocking and plus versatility on top of the receiving chops. On any given play, you've got him in a spot where he can make a difference, and he very likely will in whatever capacity you need. Instead of viewing Hawk as a tight end, it might be more instructive to view him as an H-back who blends elements of a FB, WR, T and an undersized OT into one nifty package. He's a big receiving stud who wins with nuanced ball skills, power and athleticism. As a blocker, he's a next-level turbocharger inline weapon who'll improve his new team's running game from the jump. I'd be comfortable taking him anywhere outside the top 5. I loved his fit with the Jaguars when I published my first mock draft in February, and I still do. I believe Hockenson is the best tight end prospect to enter the NFL draft since Vernon Davis. 2. Noah Fant, Iowa, 6'4", 249th SPARQ percentile, 98.4 comp, a smaller Jimmy Graham coming out of Miami. Mark Lindquist, if you want a more topical comp, let's go with a bigger, more athletic Evan Engram, who's willing to block. Yes, Fant is a freak athlete, one of the best to enter the NFL in the last decade. Right now, his game is predicated far more on size and raw athleticism than anything else. And while Fant is never going to be a power player, his next step as a player has to add muscle while working doggedly on the technical aspects of his craft. I should state outright that while TJ Hockenson blew my socks off last season, my exposure to Iowa left a consistent aftertaste of disappointment with regards to Fant. Fant's athleticism was so clearly superior to the defenders he faced in college that my expectation was to see him level up and go supernova in 2018. Fant was to continue to refine his receiving technique while hopefully adding some bulk and showing a bit more as a blocker. Instead of building off the flashes of brilliance we saw in 2017, he more or less repeated the performance. Fant was usurped by Hawk as Iowa's go-to receiver and finished with 9 more catches, 25 more yards, and 4 fewer TD than he did the year prior, 3.9, 5.19, 7. To be fair, if Fant had taken over for Mark Andrews in the slot of Oklahoma's high-octane offense instead of vying for targets with. But that's an alternate reality. In this one, Fant was the second-best tight end on his team, and he ceded the mantle in broad daylight in 2018. On the field, this point is important enough to repeat. Fant was not the best receiving tight end on his college team last year. Once again, we saw flashes. But once again, this guy with a transcendent size, athleticism combination disappeared for long stretches from his collegiate passing game. And that's a bit concerning. Those that argue that Fant was misused at Iowa didn't watch the Hawkeyes live and don't understand the caliber of staff that developed him. Iowa leveraged Fant's athleticism advantages in the red zone. Outside of that, it was up to Fant to prove to Nate Stanley that he was his moneymaker at receiver. In 2017, he made that argument. In 2018, he stagnated as Hockenson went into. Because Lord knows Fant's skill set is going to play at the next level if he can play with a little more dog. He's a tall pogo stick type athlete who looks like a thick dunking shooting guard on the field. All that makes sense, as Fant has a track and basketball background. Consider this: John Wall entered the NBA as a 6'4", 198th mega athlete. Fant has 50 pounds on him, and posted a vertical jump in Indy of 39.5 inches, a half-inch higher than Wall's max. Fant also had about the same vertical as springy leaper Shawn Kemp did coming in. Kemp had Fant by 6 inches, but weighed 20 pounds less entering the NBA. Other NBA stars who Fant outleapt even in their peaks: James Harden, Jimmy Butler and Russell Westbrook. And that's just the vertical. You could play the same game with Fant's other tests, and yet, Fant hasn't yet become what we wanted him to become as a receiver. And there's a chance he never does. There's a chance that he never sniffs his shorter Jimmy Graham upside. Consider this: in Fant's 3 seasons at Iowa, he never once caught 40 balls. In Bucky Hodges' 3 seasons at Virginia Tech, he never caught fewer than 40 balls. Hodges also scored 2 more TD in college. Fant tested in the 98th percentile at 6'4", 249th. Hodges tested in the 94th percentile at 6'6", 257th. Hodges still hasn't made his first NFL reception. After watching 3 years of Fant at Iowa, I'm not as convinced that he'll become an NFL star as others, and I also think he has a higher risk profile than many others do. As a receiver, it concerns me that his flashes almost always come when he has space to work. And that's why he would have destroyed worlds in Oklahoma's wide-open, pass-happy system. It's also why he disappeared for stretches in Iowa's conservative offense. Hawkeyes QB Nate Stanley didn't trust Fant to make plays in heavy traffic, unless he could fling a ball high in the red zone and make it a who can get higher competition, which Fant never loses, but Fant's lack of play strength comes into play whenever a defender can get their hands on him. Fant can get jarred off his route path, which never happens with Hockenson. And while Hockenson will take a shot to make a catch and deliver a shot for extra yards, Fant is unwilling to do the former and unable to do the latter. Fant also can catch a case of the dropsies when he thinks he's about to get blasted. Fant's 9.30% drop rate last year only ranked higher than the uber rockaholic Waring and jump ball rebounder Caden Smith on my list of top 10 Ts. The issue is not Fant's hands. Fant is the kind of receiver who can catch a ball 1 foot off the ground or 9+ feet off the ground. There aren't many players in the NFL who can say the same. You aren't able to do that if you have oven mitts. You need to be very athletic, and you need to have strong hands. Fant's mind is free in space, and it's cluttered in chaos. He's got to work to become more productive with defenders in his personal space. That's where he needs to develop the dog, but when Fant has space to work with, he's going to eat you alive. And, unlike Hodges, for instance, Fant can manufacture it early in the route by hitting the nose button off the snap. This is when he's flammable, the times when Fant gets a few steps on his man immediately and is operating from an advantage for the remainder of the play. If you can quickly get the ball anywhere within his jumbo catch radius, he's going to secure it. And if he secures it with open field ahead of him, good luck. But if Fant doesn't get his separation immediately, and if you don't give it to him by messing up, he has more trouble. Fant's route running needs work, as does his awareness of coverages and how he can leverage his athletic trump cards to take advantage of the looks he's seeing. When Iowa threw, Hockenson typically started in line as Fant lined up in the slot, outside, or hidden via H-back machinations that the Ferences must have stayed up until 3 a.m. every night giggling about. I'd suggest Fant begin his NFL career in the slot or moving around the formation. As a blocker, Fant knows what he's doing, but isn't terribly effective. He'll at least act as an impediment, beating you to the spot with his athleticism, getting his hands on you, and using technique and foot quickness from there. He's simply not a physical player, nor a player with above-average play strength. Fant can seal. Certain guys often act as a pesky speed bump for others, but he will get tossed aside by war daddies. Ask him to block linebackers or safeties, not defensive ends. Fant gets stronger. Playing more in line isn't out of the question. But I wouldn't want him there the next couple of years, not if I cared about the success he was having as a blocker in the run game. Fant's receiving chops are very real. He's not a finished product, not by a long shot. But he was a red zone killer at Iowa even during stretches where he otherwise wasn't making an impact. He should be a goal line weapon from Jump Street. Improvements in play strength, route running and tenacity are what stand between him and multiple Pro Bowls. 3. Kahale Waring, San Diego State, 6'5", 252nd SPARQ, percentile, 80.1 comp, Todd Heap, Lance Zierlein. Waring is the most fascinating tight end eval of the past few classes. Do you remember what you were doing in 2013? Through that year, Waring had never ever played football before. He picked it up in 2014 as a senior in high school. Up till that point, Waring was a sort of prep athletics renaissance man. He was a water polo goalie. He ran cross-country. He swam. He soccered. He averaged 19 points a game playing basketball. He took a writing class and wrote a compelling TV pilot titled Waring Peas, a Tolstoy-inspired buddy cop send-up starring he and now Titans DC Dean Pease. Only one of those sentences was a lie. Look Waring up. You'll note that he does not have a Rivals prospect profile for the 2015 cycle, nor a rating on 247 Sports. David Montgomery and Josh Jacobs were overlooked in recruiting for the longest time, but at least they were on the radar. Nobody knew who the hell Waring was. But his frame and athletic traits were enough to earn him a walk-on look from San Diego State. He was an uber raw 6'5", 210-pound athlete. Nothing more. The Aztecs figured they'd try to make the kid a tight end, or something, and so they instructed him to eat up and get his swole on during a 2015 redshirt campaign. Waring sporadically played in 2016. A broken foot ended his season early, but showed enough to earn a scholarship. SPSU taught the kid to block, which is really all the Aztecs ask its tight ends to do. The team I describe as the G5 Wisconsin of the West Coast, run, uses tight ends like extra offensive linemen. That was the idea with Waring as well, to turn him into a hammer, even diligent. Waring declared for the NFL draft after posting 49 receptions over the past 2 years. Meager receiving production, for sure, but keep in mind the team we're talking about. Smith, for instance, caught more balls last year, but finished fourth on his high-flying team in receptions. Waring, meanwhile, led the landlocked Aztecs in receptions by 9 last year, which is by margin on a team that didn't even complete 175 passes total last fall. Waring also led the squad in TD catches in each of the past 2 years. On those rare occasions SPSU asked Waring to run routes and catch the ball, he flashed. He gets where he wants to go quickly and smoothly, uses his big frame to effectively pin you to his back, and takes the elevator to the top floor on jump balls or errant throws, of which SDSU's QBs provide plenty. Basically, he combines the hands of the water polo goalie he once was with the box-out, elevate combo of the forward that he was once on the basketball court. There are of course lingering questions with the profile because of his inexperience. Waring dropped 4 balls last year on only 34 catchable targets, giving him an 11.76% drop rate that gives pause. Of course, the sample size is tiny and he's still learning. Targeted NFL coaching should take care of his route running, which remains understandably rudimentary. Same goes for blocking. Waring fires himself like a projectile into blocks with a tenacious, if unschooled, approach. He's willing and able but reliant, at this time, on grit, athleticism and strength more than technical know-how. Let's be clear, Waring is no sure thing to succeed. This is a risky profile, absolutely. But we know he excelled at many different sports in high school, we know his combination of traits, work ethic are top-notch, and we know that he suffered from his situation in college while prospects like Herb Smith greatly benefited from their own. If Irvin Kahale had switched teams last year, SDSU would almost assuredly have used Irv as an H-back lead blocker while Kahale may have pushed TJ Hockenson for the Mackey. Waring himself believes he'll be better in the NFL than he was in college. He believes that he hasn't come close to his ceiling. I agree. I'm not going to take pot shots at a coach as good as SDSU's Rocky Long, but it's fair to suggest that Waring's skill set was wasted on that team. I think of Waring as the anti-Dawson Knox, who continues to receive love for reasons that are not quantifiable. Unlike Knox, Waring starred at the Combine, and unlike Knox, Waring also showed out well when given opportunity at San Diego State. Despite playing in a far less conducive offense for the pass, Ole Miss ranked no. 5 in the country in passing yards per game last season. SDSU ranked no. 101. Waring still put up better stats than Knox both last season, 3-1, 3-7-2, 3-1, 5-2, 8-4, and for his collegiate career, 5-1, 6-3-7, 8-3-9, 6-0-5-0. Waring is a magic eye prospect, in no doubt. Some people look at him and don't see much of anything. I've seen him ranked outside the top 10 TEs on many different ranking lists out there. For others, like myself, the closer they look, the more they can see a diamond emerge from the rough. NFL Media's Daniel Jeremiah said on a conference call that he's limitless in terms of his athleticism. His traits are basically the pills Bradley Cooper took in Limitless. If Waring can learn to channel that power, look out. 4. Jay Sternberger, Texas A. Sternberger signed with KU out of high school, caught only 1 ball over 2 years. He redshirted as a true freshman in 2015, and then skipped down to the JUCO ranks in 2017. There, he established himself as T1 among the 2018 JUCO class. A must-have recruiting target for Jimbo Fisher after arriving at Texas A. The Aggies had a ton of young receiving talent. Kevin Sumlin, if nothing else, recruits that position as well as anyone, but sophomore QB Kellen Mond relied most heavily on the veteran newbie. Like Warring, Sternberger has a crazy backstory. As a sophomore in high school, he was a 5'9" quarterback who wore black-rimmed glasses. I picture him as Michael Squints Paladurus from The Sandlot. And just like how Squint's encounter with Wendy Peppercorn changed everything, Sternberger's brush with Kismet occurred when his arm strength was zapped by a shoulder injury, followed by a big growth spurt and a permanent move to tight end. Tight end is notoriously one of the slowest developing positions in football. For Sternberger to go from a guy who had one FBS catch through his first 3 years in college to one of the nation's most dangerous receiving TEs in the SEC in one calendar year struck me as less of a flash-in-the-pan phenomena and more of a flashing red sign that he has serious untapped NFL ability. Sternberger is a natural receiver, near the top of the class in the areas of route running and seamlessly converting from a receiver to a runner after the catch. And my gosh, did that impress me. Sternberger is very, very difficult to contain one-on-one. He's such a clever and fluid route runner, one of those guys who moves faster and quicker on the field than he tests. He creates separation, he plucks the ball clean away from his body on the move, he wins in contested situations, he offers a large catch radius, he doesn't waste motion turning upfield, and he's dangerous after the catch due to a combination of fluidity, vision and I'm not going down tenacity. The eval isn't all roses. Sternberger only tested as a 33rd percentile athlete. He plays more athletic than that, but he's no Noah Fant. Sternberger feels NFL average to me in that department. Sternberger is an inline guy, but an inline guy who isn't much of a blocker. He's a tough kid who tries hard, but Sternberger lacks the muscle and pop to prevent getting pushed around by power guys on the edge. With receiving, Sternberger is a finesse blocker. Technique and effort help him win against non-power guys via positioning and leverage. A power run team probably shouldn't prioritize him, but a team that throws more in motions the tight end around the formation should be able to extract a little value out of Sternberger in this area. As with Warring, Sternberger is a relative newcomer to the position, and also to his big frame. Perhaps NFL coaching could coax a little more value out of him in this department. All in all, I see an ascending prospect who's further ahead of the developmental curve than he has any business being. If Sternberger falls to round 3, some lucky team may get a long-term starter on the cheap, if they're willing to be a little patient early on. 5. Irv Smith, Alabama, 6'2", 242nd SPARQ percentile, 32.6 comp. The ceiling is a better blocking Trey Burton. The floor is a classic tweener who may struggle to stick around the NFL after his rookie contract expires. If you think TE5 is harsh, let me do one better. I very nearly grouped Irvin with the fullback, H-back group below. But while I think he may in short order be heading for a utility jack-of-all-trades master of none role, Irv offers several tools that a smart staff could weaponize at the next level. A former 4-star recruit, Smith rarely played as a true freshman in 2016 and managed a pedestrian 1.4, 1.283 receiving line as a sophomore on Alabama's championship